Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
Your co-host, Rich Gear here, as well as Dan Jansen.
Yes.
Yes, and I'm excited to see you. It's been a while you've been on the show, hey, buddy? Oh,
Yeah, Dan's a missionary to South Sudan,
Yes.
and we're glad to have him back. He's on furlough here, and he's continuing his work in South Sudan. And today we have a topic that we've personally were involved in working with Mr. Rich.
Yeah, you worse than me actually, but I was closer to the scene of the action. But they loved you, you know.
Yeah, we're talking about technology of bees.
Yep.
And bees have a lot of unique design features that are pretty interesting, and we're going to talk a little bit about those. But we have had a little experience this past week that wasn't that fun.
Doug was really getting on me. He said, "Let's go out and get rid of some of those branches out there. A tree fell in my woods. I got some property in some woods. A tree fell over last winter, and we chopped them all up with a chainsaw. There's a lot of branches looking up." And Doug said, he was feeling energetic, and he said, "Let's go out and move those back to the fire pit I got in the backyard." And I said, "Oh, okay, I did it. Sometimes I got to be compelled on there." So anyway, Doug goes out there, and what's the old thing? No good deed goes unpunished. And
we get out in your Kubota, and we started loading up branches into that Kubota and pulling them out of the brush pile. And I was head first into this brush pile, pulling out branches, and all of a sudden, pow!
Yeah.
Ow! Ow!
He kept yelling, and there was hundreds of bees.
I got swarmed.
He got swarmed. I did too, but I had a hoodie on, and I had gloves on. I had long pants. You had long pants, but you had basically kind of a light shirt on.
Yeah, and so I got nailed here. I got a good welt here that's sort of festering up, but it's getting better. But these little critters gave me a few problems.
Yeah, there were yellow jackets.
Yellow jackets, yeah.
Yeah, yellow jackets. And I've known this for a while, but I didn't realize there was a bee's nest there, man. I mean, so we pulled up the thing, and they were up, and I ran away from the Kubota as well. I got stung about 4 times. Doug, you got about 14, 15 stings, as I remember.
About a dozen.
Is that all it was? I thought you had more than that. I thought you had several.
Yeah.
And they followed him into the house.
Yeah, I had one nail me in the house right on my finger, and saw him there doing his business, and wow! Then he escaped, and I finally got him later on. But man, it wasn't a fun time.
Are those kind of bees, Dan? Can they sting you more than once, or do they die when they sting you?
Yellow jackets sting you more than once.
So they're actually like
that's
a wasp.
That's what they must have done right here. Is that bing bing bing?
Yeah.
Right there. So they nailed me good, and
honeybees, they leave their stinger behind.
They die,
and it pulsates. And so if you right away can take something like a credit card or something and scrape it away, it'll put less venom in, and it will bother you less.
Mm-hmm. Really, but the yellow jacket just. I remember it was a wasp, Doug, a friend of mine when I was a kid, and then we stirred up one. It was on a ground hornet or whatever. They followed us all, and this guy was standing outside of my house, and this bee. I'm watching him. Did I really see what I thought? He went right up his arm. Bam, 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 bam. It was about 7 stings. I mean, it felt like about 20, but it was probably about 5 to 7 stings. Just right back, and before he could get away from it. Well, that was you, Doug. This last week, you got nailed good.
Yeah, and you left your Kubota running, and that left you with the dilemma. We had to actually take care of the bee's nest before you could shut off your Kubota. And bring it back into the.
So I let it running. I went over to a store, picked up the kill shot, kind of thing, sprayed on the nest. I have really not been back out there. Well, I was out there actually because it's a diesel, so it's not bad to leave a diesel running.
Might be able to do it at night, maybe.
Yeah. So anyway, but I went, and about an hour later, I came back out and rode the Kubota back into the pole barn. But man, that was quite a thing. So bees are interesting. Doug, I like this article here. It's not really about, I don't know what you want to start with, Doug, and I defer to you, but I love this. Was there really no death before the fall? and talks about like things that sting you and things that all kinds of stuff like that. So I don't know whether you wanted to get to the technology first.
Yeah, let's talk about a lot of the things that are really hard to explain from a evolutionary standpoint, because there are obvious design features of the bee that tell you that it was designed by God, and to be able actually then you have to explain, well, where did this nasty stinger come from? And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But for example, they have gyroscopes, airspeed gauges, and UV sensors that measure the tilt of the horizon. They have compound eyes with the 7,000 hexagonal facets. And each facet is a tiny tube, and it points. They contain their own lens, and it points in a certain direction. So that this enables them to see in all directions.
Yeah, this is a big thing that gets me, Doug. When we talk about, and Dan, when we talk about design, how can you look at stuff like this and we can't even figure out how to do it? Mm-hmm. And it's so optimal. And not only is it optimal, but it's so small. Mm-hmm. We cannot figure out how to do things that small, Doug,
right,
to be that precise. I mean, we're trying to come up with technology like drones, technology. Or I read an article that you sent, Doug, and it was pretty neat stuff that they tried to do for Mars for outer space type technology, but they can't get it small enough to do what they really wanted to do.
Right.
There was a term, I can't remember, maybe you remember it, something about a
miniaturization.
Yeah, it wasn't miniaturization, but it was the way it was able to move. It was something that really was fascinating. Flying robots, okay, and it says it talked about. Optic flow, that's what the word I was trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Optic flow may solve problems that are unavoidable and with conventional guidance systems. This is with all of our technology, all of our human wisdom, all of our scientific knowledge, which is not insignificant. Mm-hmm. Doesn't even compare to what the little bee can do. Mm-hmm.
And all this with a brain the size of a sesame seed.
That's what I'm getting at. You imagine if we could miniaturize that much? I mean, look at this thing.
Think of all the technology that's in a gnat. Little tiny no-see-em or whatever it is. They have these little things flying around, and yet these actually have jobs to do in God's creation.
And and the thing is, they always defer to time, but time doesn't help at all. Mm-hmm. And even if time was a factor, I don't think there's enough time in the universe to figure out how to make something like this. I mean, this was interesting.
Yeah, either it works or it doesn't.
Yeah, that's the problem. I mean,
and you basically, to have some kind of selection pressure or natural selection, you'd think you'd need just one mutation per generation. You know what I mean? But in order to properly select for a mutation, but yet they've got to have whole systems come online
all of
at once.
And they have to come
or else it's just extra baggage. Whatever happens.
Isn't that the problem? Like with mutational and genetic load, isn't that a real problem? Mm-hmm. I mean, by the time you get to one good thing, you've got all kinds of wasted stuff that would just destroy anything from the good thing from even being utilized. But here we have all the stuff functioning in the bee, like in a perfect precision, and we can't do that with all of our technology. I like this. The global positioning system, GPS, relies on satellite mapping, but an enemy can jam satellite signals. Also, it only works on pre-imagined. Sorry, I've got my paper in front of me. I'm trying to read this thing, but pre-mapped objects, and won't stop a spy craft from crashing into a rubbish bin, for example. In other words, something there they can't calculate. For example, for a space probe like the Mars Pathfinder mission, it was even worse. Signals between Earth and Mars took 11 minutes to travel a distance of 190 million kilometers, so the robot has to crawl at a snail's pace, 52 miles in 30 days. So any faster, and the rover might have fallen into a crevasse, or crevasse, if you want to pronounce it, before mission control even knew that the rover was in danger, let alone land signal to change on course. But bees they've done these tests, Doug. I was reading about that. Did you read?
Yeah, they did some
Tell
tests.
us about that. That's really amazing.
Well, they had them in little wind tunnels.
Little tunnels, yeah.
And so they actually had little images on the tunnels that showed them moving at a certain pace, in this wind tunnel. And so the bees adjusted to that in a number of different ways. And
Yes, if the side was moving, it was at the same. They would stay stationed. They would stay right in the center. But if it moved, they would move. And it was, man, I've always been remarkable. So we said we didn't like getting stung by them, but the bees are how amazing for years, Doug, they thought the bumblebee was aerodynamically impossible to fly. Now they've kind of figured out how they could do it, but because the bees, the way the rings rotate. But again, Doug, the flying system, the optic system, everything is designed to, and you can't get around that word. You try to, but everything, it's not only just the appearance of design, it had to be designed to do what it does, and all, like you said, all at once, Dan. All at once. That's
now,
amazing.
Dan, you and Teresa had a little experience with some killer bees. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened to that?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a little bit embarrassing, but we were in South Sudan, and it was one of our first trips over there, and just a short trip, and I had borrowed a West Nile suit from some of the, from one of the other doctors there, and then
What's a West Nile suit? What's a West Nile suit? What is it?
it's a mosquito.
Oh, it's a mosquito. Okay.
Netting suit.
All right.
Okay, West Nile virus prevention suit, and so I felt I was good to go as far as doing some beekeeping, and I knew just enough beekeeping to be dangerous. That's what I would say. So this is, what? It's really hard to see the backhoe, which had bees in it, and get the plate off the back. It's really hard to do that at night. I probably should just kind of get that one plate off of there and maybe do the rest at night. And so I got my tools and went to the backhoe, and the bees didn't seem to bother me too much.
And they were killer bees?
They were killer bees inside of the backhoe. So the bees didn't seem to bother me too much, until one moment I started pulling the plate away from the backhoe, and the bees were behind that plate.
Oh, no.
And that is when things went really wrong.
Wow, are they pretty aggressive bees for the
Oh yeah, you know that movie about killer bees? I don't know if you've ever watched
Swarm
that.
or something?
Swarm something.
Yeah.
I thought, well, that's just sensationalized. But our experience, my wife and I's experience with those killer bees, validated a lot of things that happened in that movie.
Wow.
So
Are they pretty good size?
no, they're the same size
As our bees?
As our bees,
But they're just more aggressive, huh?
they're extremely aggressive. But I also did find out from later experience is that if the bees had been around humans, they were almost as docile as honeybees in terms of how close you could get to them.
Really? Okay.
But if they haven't been around humans, then they're extremely aggressive. So anyway, the whole area they were all over me, and I thought, you know what? I know where my wife is at, and I know these bees might be a problem, and so for my wife, and so I've got to go warn her that these bees are a problem, and they're out to get anybody, and that she shouldn't go back by this area with the backhoe, because that's normally the path you would take. So I started going out in that direction, but the bees were on me like crazy, and so I was trying to wave at her from a distance, and the voice couldn't carry that far because I was keeping my distance because I had a ton of bees on me, and yelling at her, trying to tell her, don't go back that way. And she, at the same time as I was talking to her, she started being attacked by the bees too.
Oh no.
And she had been, so she went back by that area, picked up probably quite a few bees as she was going through there.
Did you get stung a lot?
Then we had talked earlier, and knowing just enough to be trouble. I mean, make a nuisance of the whole situation. I had told her. I said, now if the bees attack at any point in time, go get under the shower. I think they'll leave you alone. Well, that couldn't be. That was apparently not at all true.
You couldn't have given a worse piece of advice. Is that what you're saying?
I think it might have deterred them slightly, but only slightly.
Really?
They were coming in at her and just stinging her.
Can they sting over and over again?
Just once.
So they die when they sting you.
They die when they sting
So you just got hundreds of them were coming after.
Well, yeah, they were, and she thought to herself, oh, this is what it's like to die, because she thought there was no hope of getting. They were just going to keep attacking her, and everybody had gone into their dwellings, or their cabins, their homes that were there, and shut the door. But I think they must have heard Teresa and seen that Teresa wasn't there, and they figured out that they needed to go rescue her. So one of them.
Where were you in all this?
I was walking the bees off.
Okay.
I did see one of the household helps was attacked by bees, and I felt really bad that she got stung quite a bit too. And because I saw them on her or whatever, but there was nothing I could do except walk off the bees. And so I took off like at least 3/4 of a mile away, and before I got all the bees off of me finally.
They couldn't sting you, right? Or could they sting you? You were protected by the suit, right?
They were not stinging me because I had the West Nile virus suit on, and I had a lab coat on underneath that. Except later that day, they'd asked me to also get rid of some bees that were in the police station. So I went after them with a vengeance, and they were the smell was just terrible, and I was just opening things up and cleaning the bees out of it, and they were attacking me.
Wow.
But whenever I raised my arm kind of like this, the lab suit exposed the area,
they'll get you.
And they were getting me in an area here. It just made me more mad. So I pulled off. I pulled off one of the mosquito nets off of one of the beds, and I just kind of wrapped it around there, and kept working, and to try to get rid of them. But that's a separate story. So anyway, one of the people, I heard about this when I came back, but one of the people had gone and had realized Teresa was in trouble and was still outside. So they know, based on their local experience, that if you put some kind of a sheet or something over your head, and it covers up the top of your body, the likelihood of getting stung very much is low. So
what, did they attack your head? Is that what
they attack from the top down?
Oh, I see.
And so that person went over the head with the sheet and went out and got Teresa and brought her in the room, and so there were bees that came with her inside, and then there was the screen on the window. And the bees were attacking the screen, and she could just see them going like this on the screen.
Wow.
And so that whole thing with the bus and the bees trying to get in the bus and the movie Swarm, I mean, it's like, whoa, some of that is just like true.
That's really true. Wow.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the movie The Birds, with Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah, but bees they do it.
Yeah. So what it is that the bees have a pheromone that once they sting you once, it's a signal that everybody should follow and sting you.
Oh,
and
man.
So the smell is very strong.
Oh.
Now, I've worked with European bees too with my dad, because my dad was a beekeeper, and the strength of the smell of these African bees was far out strength the European smell from the bees, because we used to get stung too by the European bees when I worked with them. I know my dad had an overalls, and those overalls never got rid of the oil that from the stings. That there were all these stings in the back.
Really?
Back. It didn't go all the way through, but they were.
So European bees more aggressive than American honeybees too, or I mean, that's what you raise honeybees, right?
Well, the American honeybee is a relative to the European. They're basically a European bee.
I guess I never think of the honeybee as being aggressive. I never think of them. I mean, they will if you attack their nest, I suppose, and they will sting you. But
we had all kinds of trouble when we were growing up. If we got too close to certain hives are very aggressive. They're very wild, and some hives are very tame. And you could go right up to them, but other hives, you get within 15 feet of them, and they'll come after you.
Really? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then with these Africanized bees, they're much more aggressive, and so.
Well, you're in Africa. They're not Africanized. They're natives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, African bees.
Yeah, but they come here, Africanized,
right?
And they mate with they merge with. Do they ever merge with American bees?
I think the predominant situation from talking to beekeepers is that they just attack and kill and take over the hives, and the beekeepers say that they see them on the ground spinning around and just attacking the European bee until it's or you can call it an American bee, attacking the bee until it's dead. They're so aggressive until they kill them all, and then they inhabit the hive.
But do they produce honey?
Yeah,
I heard they did, but not as much. Or do they produce it good, or is it still? I mean, is it pretty good?
That's a question I don't.
I've just read that. I've heard that over the years. That they don't. They're not. Their ability to produce is not quite as rich.
I found that they're more transitory too in Africa, because once the water or the food supply runs out, they're moving on.
Because we've had a whole big deal in America where a lot of the honeybees have, for whatever reason, died. There's a lot of honeybees have died.
There's varroa mites, and then there's also the waxworm. I think they're the same type of worm that they use for fishing. And then there's also those problems have become greater. And then there's some blame being placed on neonicotinoid pesticides that are more persistent in the environment, maybe, and they might be impinging on the bee population too. So
this renders a question, of course. Why did God create these creatures to have stingers? With all this technology, it's obvious the bees were created, but why this pernicious design?
Well, one thing I read, Doug, in the article said they're like remains, or they're changed ovipositors, or so, how do you pronounce that word?
Ovipositor.
Ovipositor. Okay.
Yeah,
which is kind of an egg
the
layer.
females sting.
Yeah, the males do not sting.
Yeah, only the queen lays the eggs, right?
Right.
But the females have been sort of like altered with these stingers instead of the ovipositors, and
But I've always heard that you've only had one queen per nest, and you got stung by a lot of bees. So there's a lot of bees. Are there a lot of females? A lot of female bees. I thought there was only
there's worker bees, and then there's the queen.
But I thought the worker bees were all males.
They were all
the drones are males.
The drones are males, but the workers could be male and female.
I don't know.
I think they're all female.
Okay.
The workers are female.
Oh, is that right? Okay. Male. I just learned something new, folks. I didn't know that.
The drones, I think, take care of the queen.
Yes.
And service the queen or whatever.
So the creationist theory about this, and I don't know if I'm satisfied with this or not, but is that the pernicious parts of it were mutations of the original bee that was genetically altered to that where the ovipositors became stingers.
The reason why that's a little bit attractive, it has some scriptural, at least you can extrapolate. When the curse came on the earth, when you talk about thorns and thistles that were in plants that were not there before, and obviously labor was going to give you trouble, but there was going to be, you get the idea, there was going to be things that were going to change in nature that were not there before. Okay, you're going to have to toil to get things, thorns and thistles, You get the
Right.
idea that poison and poisonous type things were a result or a direct result
Of the fall.
of the fall. You know, that they did not exist.
An example of that would be Clostridium tetani, which is the bug that causes tetanus.
Okay.
And it's a mutation of Clostridium bacterium that that instead of producing a certain protein, it produces a poison, and it's that poison that causes tetanus. And one of the things that is interesting about this is when we went down to Mexico, we went to the caverns down there.
Yeah.
They were showing us these bees that they have down there that don't have stingers.
Yes, that's right. I forgot about that.
And they produce the finest honey, but
Yes. Yeah.
but they don't sting. They're docile, and they're friends to the Mexicans down there, the Mayan Indians who are keeping these bees, and
Well,
so they have.
Yeah, some of the bees have ovipositors for laying their eggs,
Right.
and they'll lay their eggs actually as parasites into other creatures.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and so they will oviposit into a caterpillar, like the ichneummonid bee does this parasitization, and
Yeah.
so
Does that bee have any beneficial things for us? Is that-
yeah. Actually, they're beneficial predators, and you want to keep them around.
Okay.
Yeah, because they'll keep down the population of the pest population.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a moth of the result from the caterpillars, right? And the moth is just destructive.
Well, the worm itself can be destructive
Oh, yeah. They're
and eat your crops.
Yeah.
So
okay. Well, they don't produce honey though.
I don't think so. No, they eat the proteins and stuff inside of.
All
It's
right.
weird when they're full of those, when they get parasitized by several larvae, and the larvae are moving the caterpillar inside. It's like an alien movie.
Oh, oh man! Wow. So anyway, so
all that doesn't seem to be part of the original design, though. That was my point: is that
Yeah.
there was a fall. There was a time where things were vastly different in the God's creation, designed to live forever. And you had, but the fall altered a lot of different things in this world, where a lot of things were co-opted in the design to be able to cope with this curse.
So that was one thing you said, but you started out by saying you weren't quite totally sold on that argument, or there were other things that might be, or at least part of the equation.
To me, it's we don't have a lot of scripture to back it, except for the account of the curse.
Yeah,
and so we're just speculating.
yeah, and
that's the only thing that we can do here is to figure out, well, does this really make a satisfying argument? And for that, we have the thing where you don't have answers, and we have to be satisfied that we can't have answers for everything.
No, but I think it is fair to posit an extrapolation from that scripture.
Yes.
But again, I agree with you. I tell people, I say, look, the biblical text doesn't tell you everything. It's fair and reasonable to make extrapolations, but you can't be dogmatic about those things, because we are in the same boat as the evolutionist is. We were not there.
Well, we'll see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution. Thanks for joining us.
Bye now.